Have you ever wondered if the hardest trial of your life has already passed, and whether your soul carries silent scars that now shape your strength? Think for a moment about those nights when you stared at the ceiling, replaying every failure, every betrayal, every road that seemed to collapse beneath your feet. Everyone carries at least one such memory, a season where existence itself felt unbearable, when the world grew colder and every answer slipped away like sand through trembling hands. Yet here you are, you survived. But the question remains, did you merely survive or did you transcend? Life rarely announces when a true trial has ended. It doesn't hand you a certificate of endurance. Instead, it leaves traces, subtle but undeniable signs that something in you has shifted forever. You may have noticed them without giving them a name. A strange calm where anger once erupted, a deep patience where you once burned with frustration, or an unexpected compassion for the very kind of people who once wounded you. These are not small changes. They are hints that your soul has walked through fire and emerged tempered, not destroyed. Niccolo Machiavelli, often misunderstood as merely a thinker of cunning politics, once observed that adversity is the forge where true resilience is formed. Unlike easy victories, suffering strips illusions from us, leaving only what is essential. The storms of life do not just test us, they redefine us. And perhaps without even realizing it, you are no longer who you were before your darkest chapter. So let me ask you, do you recognize yourself in the mirror of your own past? Or do you feel that a different self looks back at you, someone less naive, less fragile, but paradoxically more human? That is the intrigue we will explore together in this journey. The 8 subtle but powerful signs that your soul has already endured its most difficult trial. And as we walk through them, you may discover that the very pain you once begged to escape was, in fact, the architect of your new strength. If this resonates with something buried in your own experience, stay with me. And before we dive in, I invite you to support this space. Leave a like, subscribe, and share in the comments one moment when you felt life tested you beyond your limits. Your story may be the very echo someone else needs to hear. What if your darkest night had been not a curse but a hidden initiation? Imagine for a moment that the chaos, the heartbreak, and the disappointments were not the closing of a door, but the precise hammering of a blacksmith shaping steel. What if all the moments you wished had never happened were, in reality, the secret curriculum of life, training you for something higher? Picture yourself years from now, looking back at this exact moment with new eyes. Instead of bitterness, you feel gratitude. Instead of asking, why me? You realize you are being entrusted with a weight only you could carry. Think of how different your relationships, your work, even your inner dialogue would look if you truly believed that your greatest wound was also your initiation into wisdom. Machiavelli often wrote about power, but not only in the political sense. He understood that the one who survives turmoil without losing clarity gains a form of power that cannot be stolen: inner command. Imagine living with that kind of authority within yourself, no longer begging life to be easier, but becoming the kind of person who is not easily shaken. Close your eyes and consider this. How much of your anxiety and frustration comes from replaying the past as if it was wasted time? And how would your soul breathe differently if you began to see it as a season of hidden preparation? Your suffering then would no longer be meaningless, it would become the very seed of transformation. This shift in imagination is crucial, because when you see your wounds as useless, you remain a prisoner of them. But when you dare to reframe them as lessons, you suddenly gain freedom. The storm no longer defines you, it instructs you. Pain no longer humiliates you, it refines you. So I ask you, what if your most unbearable experience was not life's way of crushing you, but of preparing you for a resilience others cannot understand? Could you begin to reinterpret the very moments you most despised as the foundation of your present strength? Keep that vision in mind as we continue, because in the next step, we will confront a disruptive insight, one that may challenge the very way you've been taught to think about suffering itself. We are often told that suffering is an obstacle to happiness, something to be avoided, minimized, or erased as quickly as possible. But what if this common belief is completely wrong? What if suffering is not the enemy of a fulfilled life, but the very soil in which depth, character, and wisdom grow? Here lies the disruptive truth. The absence of pain does not create maturity. It creates fragility. A life too comfortable, too sheltered from hardship, produces not strength, but weakness. Machiavelli himself, in his reflections on leadership, observed that those who rise without facing trials crumble at the first real test. In other words, protection is not love and ease is not growth. Think about the times in your own life when you changed the most profoundly. Were they the seasons of comfort, or the seasons when everything fell apart? The truth is unsettling. Comfort preserves us, but it rarely transforms us. Crisis, on the other hand, strips away illusions, leaving us face to face with our raw humanity. This is the paradox most people resist. The very experiences you prayed to escape may have been the experiences that forced you to confront who you really are. Without betrayal, you would never have learned discernment. Without failure, you would never have discovered humility. Without loss, you would never have awakened to the value of what remains. The common view is that suffering diminishes us. But in reality, it is indifference, vanity, and complacency that shrink the soul. Suffering, when endured with awareness, expands it. It cracks open the shallow shell of self-centeredness and reveals the deeper capacity for patience, compassion, and inner strength. So let's be clear. If you have walked through a storm and emerged with scars, you are not broken. You are not damaged goods, you are evidence of resilience. And your scars do not weaken your story, they authenticate it. The disruptive insight is this: you should not wish for a life without trials, but for the strength to transcend them. Because it is not the easy seasons that reveal the true stature of the soul, but the seasons where everything seems lost. And yet, somehow, you refuse to surrender. In the next part, we will see how thinkers like Machiavelli and others validate this hidden wisdom, offering a foundation that proves you are not imagining it. Adversity really is the forge of greatness. Niccolò Machiavelli is often remembered as the cold strategist of politics, but his writings reveal something deeper, an unshakable awareness of how human beings are formed through adversity. In The Prince, he argues that a ruler who inherits power without struggle is far weaker than one who has had to fight for every inch of it. Why? Because the latter has been forced to confront resistance, deception, and loss, realities that sharpen judgment and breed resilience. Without trial, there is no wisdom. Without resistance, there is no strength. This idea is not limited to Machiavelli. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, echoed the same truth. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. For him, obstacles were not interruptions but invitations to deeper growth. What you think blocks your path often is your path. Even in literature, this principle appears again and again. Consider Dante's Divine Comedy. Before reaching the vision of paradise, Dante descends into the depths of hell and climbs the mountain of purgatory. The journey through suffering is not optional. It is the very architecture of transformation. Without passing through darkness, the vision of light would have no weight. Modern psychology confirms these insights. Research on post-traumatic growth shows that many individuals who endure severe crises emerge with greater empathy, stronger values, and deeper meaning in life. This is not to romanticize pain. It is to recognize that within its furnace, the human spirit can be reshaped in ways comfort never achieves. Think of it this way. If life were a novel, the chapters of triumph would be uplifting, but the chapters of loss and struggle would be the ones that carve depth into the story. They are the moments that give weight to everything else. And the same is true of you. By standing here today, after what you have endured, you are part of an ancient tradition of human beings who discovered that survival alone is not the final gift. The gift lies in the wisdom carried forward, the capacity to see life differently, to love more deeply, and to stand more firmly. As we move forward, we will uncover the invisible dynamics at play within suffering, the patterns that most people overlook, but which silently determine how trials either break a person or forge them into something unshakable. One of the greatest illusions about suffering is the belief that it is purely external, that life happens to us, and we are merely passive recipients of its cruelty. But the deeper truth is that the real battle of suffering often unfolds in silence, within the theater of the mind. What breaks us is not only the loss itself, but the stories we tell ourselves about that loss. Think of this pattern. A betrayal occurs. The fact itself is painful, but the deeper wound comes from the inner voice that whispers, "You must not be worthy of love." Or a failure at work happens. The event is temporary, but the hidden interpretation, "I will never succeed, I am inadequate," becomes a prison that outlives the event. The suffering outside passes, but the suffering inside lingers because we confuse circumstance with identity. Machiavelli recognized that power was not just about armies and cities, it was about perception. The same is true for the soul. Adversity is painful, but the interpretation of adversity decides whether you are destroyed or transformed by it. Many never realize that what keeps them in chains is not what happened, but the invisible narratives they silently rehearse. Here lies the dynamic most people miss. The mind amplifies pain by attaching meaning to it. Loss becomes proof of personal failure. Hardship becomes evidence that life is against us. Yet the very same event can become a school if interpreted differently. A rejection can be a signal to grow stronger rather than a verdict of unworthiness. A closed door can redirect us toward a path we never considered. Psychologists call this cognitive framing, but philosophy has known it for centuries. Epictetus, the Stoic slave-turned-teacher, declared, "We suffer not from the things themselves, but from the opinions we have about them." The external blow is unavoidable, but the invisible story you attach to it decides whether your soul bends or breaks. The hidden problem is this. Most people never examine those silent interpretations. They replay the same inner narratives for years, never realizing they are carrying chains that could have been broken long ago. And so, the true victory of surviving life's hardest trial is not simply enduring the storm outside, it is conquering the storm inside. Recognizing that distinction is one of the most powerful signs that your soul has already transcended its deepest test. Next, we will give voice to key declarations, concise, piercing truths that cut through illusion and remind us of the hidden strength already present within us. There are moments when long explanations fail, and what we need is a sharp sentence that slices through confusion like a blade. These are truths meant not only to be heard, but to echo inside you until they reshape the way you see yourself. Consider these declarations as markers of a soul that has already endured its hardest trial. What once broke me no longer defines me. The past is not your identity, it is your training ground. When you can look back at what shattered you and no longer feel enslaved to it, you are already free. Pain taught me more than pleasure ever could. Happiness may soothe, but it rarely transforms. It is pain that chisels depth into character, revealing capacities you did not know existed. I do not seek an easy path. I seek the strength to walk any path. This is the opposite of wishful thinking. It is the maturity of knowing that life will not bend to your desires, so you must grow strong enough to face whatever it delivers. My scars are not evidence of defeat. They are the proof of survival. Scars do not diminish beauty. They authenticate it. They show the story of battles endured and endured well. Suffering did not steal my humanity. It deepened it. Instead of making you bitter, pain can enlarge your compassion, your patience, and your understanding of others. Each of these sentences is a kind of sword you can carry. Repeat them not as cliches, but as weapons against despair. They are reminders that the storm you feared most has already passed and you remained standing. Machiavelli observed that fortune is fickle, that power shifts, and that appearances deceive. But the person who can master their own inner fortress cannot be conquered easily. These declarations are stones in that fortress, protecting you from the return of old illusions. The true challenge, however, is not only to affirm them intellectually, but to live them, to embody them when life once again presses its weight upon your chest. As we move on, we will explore paradoxes that reveal how strength and fragility, loss and gain, despair and hope often walk hand in hand, and why understanding these dualities is crucial to recognizing the depth of your transformation. Life often hides its deepest truths inside paradoxes, realities that seem contradictory at first glance, but that secretly complete each other. To recognize them is a sign of maturity, for only a soul that has walked through fire can hold opposites in its hands without despair. Consider the paradox of strength and fragility. Before your greatest trial, you may have believed that strength meant never breaking. But after surviving, you realize the opposite. True strength is the ability to break and still return whole. The fragile glass that never cracks is useless compared to the clay that shatters, is remolded, and emerges stronger with fire. Then there is the paradox of loss and gain. You thought you were losing everything: your stability, your dreams, perhaps even your sense of self. And yet, in losing what you clung to, you gained clarity about what truly matters. Machiavelli noted that fortune often strips rulers of their illusions, forcing them to rely on character rather than circumstance. The same is true of your soul. Loss removed what was unnecessary so gain could reveal itself in unexpected form. Another paradox emerges between despair and hope. In your darkest hour, hope seemed impossible. And yet, paradoxically, it was the act of facing despair fully that allowed a deeper, quieter form of hope to appear. Not the shallow optimism of everything will be fine, but the resilient trust that, even if things are not fine, I will endure. Finally, there is the paradox of power and surrender. Machiavelli wrote that rulers must learn when to use force and when to yield. The same applies within. Surviving your trial taught you that not every battle is won by resistance. Sometimes the greatest victory lies in surrender, accepting reality as it is rather than exhausting yourself against what cannot be changed. To embrace these dualities is to transcend black and white thinking. It is to see that life is rarely either or, but both and. And when you can hold these opposites without collapsing into confusion, it means your soul has been tempered by experience. So let me ask you, which paradox has your suffering revealed to you? Did fragility reveal your strength? Did loss uncover a hidden gain? If you can answer yes, then you already carry evidence that the hardest test of your life has transformed you. Next, we will shift from paradox to promise, exploring the personal rewards that come when one's soul has endured and transcended its greatest trial. Every trial whispers a question. Will you remain who you were, or will you become someone new? When you endure the hardest season of your life and emerge on the other side, the promise is not just survival, it is transformation. The reward is not external applause, but an inner authority that cannot be taken away. What does this reward look like? First, it is a quiet strength. You no longer panic at every storm because you have lived through one that seemed impossible. Minor frustrations that once consumed your energy now appear trivial, almost laughable. This calm is not arrogance, it is wisdom born of fire. Second, the reward is compassion. Having known suffering, you no longer dismiss the pain of others. You listen differently, you see more deeply. Where once you judged quickly, now you understand that everyone carries invisible battles. This shift from judgment to compassion is one of the clearest signs that your soul has grown. Third, there is clarity. When you lose what you thought you needed, you learn to separate illusion from necessity. You discover what is essential, what truly sustains you, and you stop wasting time chasing shadows. Machiavelli noted that adversity strips away illusions, leaving leaders to rely only on what is real. The same holds for you. You now live with a sharper sense of priority. The final reward is resilience. Once you have endured your hardest trial, future obstacles lose much of their power. They may shake you, but they no longer define you. You carry within you the memory of a victory already won, a living proof that despair is survivable. This is not to say that life becomes easy. It never will. But the soul that has passed through its most difficult test possesses a strength that endures beyond circumstance. The promise is not comfort, but confidence, the unshakable assurance that, though storms will come, you will not be destroyed by them. So, ask yourself, do you feel this quiet strength, this deepened compassion, this new clarity within you? If so, you are already tasting the reward of endurance. In the next part, we will ground all these insights in a broader conceptual framework, weaving philosophy, psychology, and literature into a foundation that shows why these signs are not just personal impressions, but part of a timeless human pattern. To truly grasp why your soul's hardest trial becomes the turning point of your life, we need to place this experience within a broader framework, one that unites philosophy, psychology, and human history. Otherwise, these signs may feel like isolated emotions rather than the universal milestones they really are. Philosophically, we begin with the Stoics. Epictetus insisted that freedom is not about controlling events, but about mastering the inner response. Marcus Aurelius echoed him. Obstacles are not interruptions, but invitations. For them, hardship was not an exception to life. It was the essence of life's training. Suffering is the curriculum that teaches the soul to become unshakable. Psychology calls this post-traumatic growth. Researchers have documented how individuals who survive devastating events often emerge with deeper gratitude, stronger relationships, and a clearer sense of purpose. Pain dismantles illusions, but in doing so, it also constructs resilience. What once seemed unbearable becomes the seed of a renewed identity. Literature has always told this story. Think of Odysseus in Homer's Odyssey. His long journey is not simply about returning home. It is about becoming the kind of man who can endure storms, resist temptation, and lead his people after immense suffering. The journey itself transforms him into the hero he was destined to be. The pattern is ancient and universal: descent into chaos, endurance through trial, return with wisdom. Machiavelli adds another layer. His reflections remind us that ease and inherited comfort make leaders fragile, while struggle makes them capable. He saw clearly that fortune favors those who are tested, because adversity strips away complacency and forces a person to act with precision and courage. The same principle applies to the individual soul. Untested character remains shallow, while tested character becomes durable. So, when you recognize the 8 signs of a soul that has transcended its hardest trial: calm resilience, compassionate vision, sharpened clarity, scars turned to strength, you are not just feeling something private. You are standing in a universal pattern traced across philosophy, psychology, and art. You are embodying a wisdom that human beings across centuries have testified to. Suffering is not the end of the story. It is the turning of the page. And now, as we arrive at the conclusion, we will draw this journey together, ending with a call not just to reflect, but to share, to connect, and to recognize yourself as part of a community of souls who have walked through fire and emerged transformed. If you have walked with me through this journey, you already know, the hardest trial of your life was not the end of you. It was the beginning of someone new. Your scars are not the proof of your defeat. They are the living testament that your soul endured the fire and came out refined. You are not who you were before, and that is not a loss. It is a triumph. Machiavelli taught that fortune is unpredictable, that life often strips us bare. Yet what he also implied is that the one who has already endured the storm is less afraid of the next one. Why? Because they have touched the limits of despair and discovered they could still rise. That is your story. You no longer tremble at the possibility of hardship, because you carry the memory of having survived your greatest test. That memory is your armor. But this journey is not only personal, it is communal. Every time you speak of your survival, you extend a hand to someone still lost in the storm. Your voice may be the anchor that keeps them from drowning. Your scars may be the very map someone else needs to find their way out. So I ask you now, what was the moment when you knew your soul had survived its hardest trial? Was it the day you forgave someone who never apologized? Was it the morning you woke up and realized the weight of despair had lifted, even if only slightly? Or was it the quiet recognition that you are no longer the same and that this change is not weakness but growth? Share that moment in the comments. Not for validation, not for applause, but because your story can become a spark of courage for someone who is still searching for light. And while you are here, support this community of reflection. Subscribe, like this video, and join us in building a space where philosophy, psychology, and human experience converge to remind us that none of us are alone in the fire. Your soul has already proven its strength. Now the task is to live as if you believe it. Carry your scars as symbols of wisdom, not of shame. And remember, the most difficult trial of your life did not end you. It introduced you to who you were always meant to become.